My wife and I, we've been to Ethiopia quite a few times, and there's a museum there, the Museum of Arts and Natural History, I think. If I remember right, there's two of them. So forgive me if I'm wrong on which one it is. But there's a whole section of the museum dedicated to um, uh, African proverbs or stories. They like to teach their young people by using stories, analogies, just as Christ, taught using stories. It just seems to stick a little bit better sometimes when you can make it practical. And I didn't always understand all of them. Some of them had a really weird ending, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense to this American white boy. Uh, but I'm sure it has meaning there. But one that I heard, and it kind of resonated, and actually resurfaced in the past couple weeks, was there was um, a European gal who was on an expedition in Africa, and she had all of her uh, belongings and her equipment and her photography gear and just all these things. And she takes off in the morning with her group of I don't know what you call an African Sherpa, but Sherpas, that kind of grabbed all of her stuff, and they had a good pace. They were trying to get to their destination so they could shoot photography at kind of that glory hour in the evening. And they got there. She did her thing. The next morning, she got up bright and early, and she's trying to muster all the guys to kind of get up and do their thing as well. And they're just not moving. And they're actually getting a little belligerent with her because she's just pressing for them to respond and pressing for them to get up and get going. And she's like, "What is the deal? Why are you guys responding this way?" And one of the kind of the patriarchs, or kind of I guess an elder in the group, stood up and said, "Wow, yesterday you made us travel way too fast and way too far. And so we're waiting for our souls to catch up with our bodies." So horrible theology. That's not where I'm going with that. But y'all get the point. Y'all get the point. Moving way too fast, and our souls just aren't staying in sync with our bodies. I think too often we measure our lives in what we can produce rather than what we're becoming. I just know that's super true in kind of the American business world, to where our value lies in our competencies and what we can create and what we can produce and what we can grow versus what we're actually becoming in the process. That was one thing Colleen Rowe, good friend of mine, I would travel to Ethiopia with her. She said a lot of great things to me, but this was one too. She just said, it's not always about the destination. A lot of times it's about the progress or the journey. I kind of wrote her off at that point. I was like, no, it's definitely about the progress, or it's about where we're going, because we have a goal at hand. This is what we're trying to accomplish. But I was young and dumb, and she was wise, and so that resonates with me now much more differently than it did then. One of the parables that, I don't know, I guess you could say disturbs me or challenges me, or I don't know, kind of shakes my paradigm from time to time, is the parable of the rich fool in Luke chapter 12. You got a guy who is obviously highly competent in whatever sphere he's operating in, so much so that he has more grain than his current barns can even hold. And he's looking out over his field and looking out over his barns, and he has this real puffed up arrogance to him, and says, "Wow, look what I've accomplished. What and I'm totally paraphrasing here. What my work has done. You know what? I'm going to actually build bigger barns, and I'm going to store up even more. That way I can just kind of sit back and coast and just relax and eat, drink, and be merry, and just kind of enjoy the bounty of my hands." And we kind of know how that story resolves, those of us who are familiar with it. God comes to him and says, "Tonight, your life will be required of you, a foolish man." That word "required" is an interesting word. It's actually kind of an accounting word. It's kind of a business word. Required, kind of when you have a debt outstanding and that payment is required. That's kind of the nuance of that word. So it kind of brings a different level of meaning, at least to me. That concept of stewardship kind of just rushes into that parable when I hear that. Your life is required of you. I'm becoming more and more convinced as I get older and as wiser people continue to speak to me, and as the Word of God continues to illuminate in my life and things in my life. But I'm becoming more and more convinced that that we can only give what we have. We can only give what we have. If our soul is unhealthy, if our spiritual being is unhealthy, if it's not where God would have us be, and we're kind of fighting or we're living in rebellion, or we are just whipped and worn out and we're not refilling, we have nothing to offer. We have nothing to offer. And if it looks like we have something to offer, it's simply not sustainable. It's going to be a flash in the pan. You can put up that first photo if you want. My kids love telling jokes. And when I saw this past week, it just reminded my kids. They got great jokes. If you all want to hear ridiculous jokes, feel free to ask them this afternoon after service. If you want to hear some great jokes, ask my daughter. She's got some really good ones regarding toilet paper. But I saw this, and I was like, at first I just kind of said, this is a silly drawing. And then it just kind of like hit me just dead in the chest when I read it. You got a caterpillar on one side, looking at a butterfly on the other side. You've changed. The butterfly says, well, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to change. There's supposed to be a transformation. You can take that down if you want. Changed people will change the world. I think a lot of times we want to see change in the world. We want to see things go in a different direction or a different trajectory, but yet we're not engaging it. We're not engaging it in a way that will bring change. And honestly, if we're not healthy spiritually, we're not going to affect change. We're just not. Transformed people will transform this world. If you want to see transformation in the world, you need to see transformation in your own life. It's just the natural progression of a Christian man or woman. I think all too often we get way too busy with great things. It could be ministry things. It could be, worship. It could be homeless ministries. It could be cup of cool water. It could be whatever. Be a business owner who's just doing great business things. Sometimes we get way, way too busy and we think we're accomplishing so much. But in reality, all we're doing is we're sacrificing our soul on the altar of ministry. Or on the altar of business, or on the altar of busyness. We're just pouring out, but we're not filling back up. I've always admired Mother Teresa. Sometimes in a crowd like this, people kind of turn you off when you mention her. But she's an amazing woman. Her story is an amazing one of just submission to the Lord and sitting with the Father on a regular basis. And what always intrigued me about Mother Teresa, I don't agree with her on obviously everything, but I do agree with her in her posture of prayer. She would pray 5 times a day, and she was busy. She would find 5 times a day and she'd pray. And it wouldn't just be this prayer like, Lord, give me food so I can feed people. It wouldn't be this prayer, so-and-so sick, so please heal them. So when I go meet with them today, they'll be healed. It wasn't that kind of prayer, even though I'm sure she prayed that way at times. Her prayer was contemplative. Her prayer was a prayer where she would sit and she would wait and she would listen and she would hear and she would understand better her value, yoked with her own depravity and why she needed the gospel. And that would compel her to love people well because she was being loved so well. She would hear the Father speak things over her while she prayed, and that would help her speak things over people while she ministered. She didn't pray so she could complete her work. She prayed, and her work became an outpouring of her prayer life. And I just had to ask the question of myself, obviously, because I tell you guys this all the time, that before I come up here and be disingenuous and preach to you guys, I definitely want to make sure I'm preaching to my own heart before I come up and sit in front of you. But I just have to ask the question, is your prayer, is the way you pray in support of your activity? Is the way you pray simply in support of your activity? And you'll notice tonight I'm going to leave some pause because I want you guys to think and I want you guys to be introspective because I think that's where we get uncomfortable and I think that's where the Spirit has an opportunity to either convict or we have an opportunity to reject. And so my prayer is that we would be convicted and that we would listen and hear and be changed and transformed by the Word of God. So is your prayer in support of your activity or is it for a different purpose? And I just had this image. I actually saw a retaining wall. I was showing properties to Scott and Chris Cross on Saturday morning. And I saw this retaining wall, and it was obviously blown out. The hydrostatic pressure just kind of made it give and do its thing. And so they actually put up like metal beams to just hold that wall up. probably 7 or 8 iron beams, and it's holding. I mean, it's definitely a good fix. It's not a pretty fix, but it's a good fix. But when I saw that, and when I read, when this came out of my fingers, I guess, because I was typing it, I had that image of that wall, and I'm just wondering, man, is that the way that I pray? Is just to support my activity, to support things that are broken in my life. You know what I mean? Or I'm actually praying to the Father to actually hear from Him what my activity even needs to be. Because that's a drastic difference in the prayer postures. Not that there's not an opportunity and a moment for the other one. But I think we operating in the flow of the Spirit should be operating in the flow of a Spirit, the Spirit. So do we use prayer to prop up our life? Do we use prayer to prop up our ministries, to prop up our businesses, to prop up our families? Or are we actually going to prayer as a wellspring for activity? I love the artwork over in the Commons, that overflow. That was a concept that I didn't really understand until I started coming here to City Church, and I just heard it said over and over and over again. Mike talks all the time. It's awesome that you're here, Mike. Talks all the time about, my conduit expanding. And it's a pipe, and so that flow is coming from a source, and then it's flowing into other regions of my business or people or community. And so he always prays, and he even prayed it just a few days ago over me, is that my conduit, my pipe would expand, and that flow would continue to happen. So there's just that realization that we should be praying and seeking the Spirit to invigorate us and move us into what we should be about, rather than just on a whim or by chance or because we got ourselves in a bind praying that God will now show up. I think that's too often what we do. And so, if we want to see change and transformation in this world, we need to be a transformed people who are operating out of an overflow of the Spirit of God, out of God Himself. And so my question tonight is, one of my many questions, I guess, but this question in particular right now is, how is your soul this evening? I know a lot of times it's hard in a group, especially a sermon format, to have immense amount of silence, because we don't want silence. We want something to fill that void. We want to hear a word of knowledge, or we want some kind of witty truth, or we want something that is just going to give us more than we had when we came in. We want to fill that satchel of faith up with something. And so to just kind of sit there and not hear anything is sometimes difficult for us, because we think, and did John lose his place in his notes? Was he not prepared? Does he not know what he's doing? Maybe. But no. I think we avoid silence a lot of times. When I was in college, and this wasn't in my notes, but it just came to me. When I was in college, I used to love, well, I still love music, but I used to love rock and roll and the alternative rock. And I know at the time it came out, one of my favorite albums was Ozzy Osbourne's Osmosis. I just loved that album. I know it sounds silly, but just Old LA Tonight. That's a killer song. I can still hear it, even though I haven't listened to it for years. But I noticed something when I was driving down the interstate there in Oklahoma City, is that when I was listening to that music, I was finding myself being enraged towards things, or in a hurry, or anxious, or whatever. And the Spirit of God just came in and said, why are you filling your head with this? Why can't you just sit with me? Why do you always have to have this stuff that isn't even endearing going through your head and going through your speakers? And not only that, why are you spending $1,500 on speakers? That's just stupid. The Spirit of God, it can be pretty candid at times. And I said, you know what? You're exactly right. This music lifestyle that I'm in is driving some of my emotion here. And not only that, but it's speaking louder than you are right now. Not that he was speaking any less loud, but I had an ear for the music versus for the Lord. And I remember there on the interstate, I pulled, it was Osmosis. I ejected it from my CD player and I just chucked it out the window. And once you do that, it's gone. And then you're like, you can either be convicted and move into that, or you can see it as being foolish and feel, regret it. I was like, okay, that was what it needed to be. And so I got back to my dorm room, took all, it was pushing 1,000 probably CDs, and I just threw them in the dumpster. I just was like, I don't even want anybody else to have this in their life. because it's clouding what the Spirit of God wants to do in my life. And so, I mean, if you ride with me in my car, I very rarely have music on. I just use that opportunity from point A to point B to just be silent and to hear from the Lord and just be introspective and reflect on maybe the next appointment and what the Lord wants me to do in that. And so I don't want to belabor that point, but I think we avoid silence. I think we like to fill the void with noise. It's a deafening noise. And it doesn't allow us to hear the good things that God has for us, or the good things that God wants to say about you. I think too often, too, we avoid solitude. I think some of us love solitude. I mean, I love solitude. Like, I'm emerging from that because of my line of work and because of what I do here at City Church. I have to be engaging. But, 10 years ago, give me a corner in a basement and maybe a glass of water and a soft, beanbag chair, and I'm good. I don't need anything else. Just leave me there for hours. I used to love going on hikes or going down to the ocean front growing up, and just, especially early in the morning, not having anybody around. It was just a good feeling. And so not everybody struggles with solitude, but there are some of us in this room that probably do, because what fuels us is not what the Lord is speaking over us. It's what the world is speaking to you. It's what your friends are speaking about you. We seek affirmation. We're addicted to affirmation. And so we continue to do things to engage people in hopes that they will reciprocate and pour it back on us. Is this resonating with anybody? Okay. You have to be alone to be freed from that addiction of affirmation and that addiction of approval. I'm guilty of it, man. I mean, I'm not going to do it tonight because I'm convicted right now, but there's other times where I preach a sermon and instead of just trusting that it was what it needed to be, I go home and say, hey, Kim, what'd you think? You know what I mean? Because I'm not okay, unfortunately, with just trusting that the Spirit of God did his thing. And then moving down the road, I actually have to seek the affirmation of my bride so I kind of feel better about what went down, Some will rationalize and say, oh, it's just critique. I just want to make sure I'm better next time. But really, my ears are just itching for affirmation. I think sometimes we struggle with solitude and just being okay with what the Lord has to say about us. And being okay with just having the Lord in our presence. Being still, man. I remember growing up, and I love my dad. I'm not dishonoring him whatsoever, but the dude was driven. He was driven. And I remember on Saturday mornings, all I wanted to do as a young boy was, watch some Saturday morning cartoons, some Thundercats, and eat some Apple Jacks. And that's all I wanted to do, man. And so I would get up, man, so early. I got so ticked because the channel, you turn it on, and it'd just be static. You're like, oh, it's not on yet. It's not on yet. None of you young guys even know what I'm talking about here. But you have to wait for the broadcast to come on. It was crazy. And so I'd sit there, and I would just wait. And then the title screen, I was like, oh, finally. And we'd turn it down really low just so we wouldn't stir my dad. Because we knew as soon as my dad woke up, we'd have to go mow the lawn. We'd have to go pick up sticks. We'd have to go do something. Because we can't just sit there filling our mind with Apple Jacks and Thundercats. And I remember when I finally married my wife and we moved out here to Spokane, I remember sitting in bed in our I think it was a Sunday. I think it was a Sunday after church. We'd come home and taken a nap. And I woke up and I just was laying there and I was like, you know what? I got absolutely nothing to do right now, but yet I'm feeling guilty because I have absolutely nothing to do. You know what I mean? I felt like I had to do something to be valuable. And so I just know that I struggled with that in the past, and I'm really getting past that, which is awesome. I was at Silverwood with my family this past week, and before, I'm kind of I'm an economy kind of guy. Like I'm kind of a capitalist in a way, and I like to get my value out of my dollar. And so if I pay $58,000 for a ticket to Silverwood, I want to be able to ride every single ride in the park in one day, and every water slide in one day. Because there ain't no way I'm buying a 2-day pass because it's way too stinking expensive. Thank God for redemption and for just helping me be still, because we went last week and it was just an epiphany. Like I was pulling into the parking lot and I kind of felt it kind of boiling up. Like, man, we better park quick because this day is And I even getting there, the park opens at 11. We were there at 11:30, and I was just a little bit perturbed. I was just like, man, we just lost 30 minutes of ride time. I was like, all right, John, you can let this stupidity continue to well up inside of you and ruin the day for absolutely everybody around you, or you can just be okay being still and being present with who's around you and where you find yourself. And I was like, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let the money aspect of it just die, and I'm just going to delight in my kids. I'm going to look at my wife in the sunlight and just appreciate her. And I'm going to enjoy my friend Lynn, who was with us. And I'm just going to enjoy the day. And I'll tell you what, man, what a wonderful day it was. And we did not ride every ride. We did not ride every ride. I just had to quiet myself a little bit. I just had to be still a little bit. We believe in the lie sometimes that we got to be accomplishing something. We have to be producing something in order to be of value in this world. My production partner, Sean Tobin, continually challenges me on Sabbath. And I just love it at such a young age, 22 years old. And it started at like at 20, 21. Just this concept of Sabbath rest. And he fights for it. And he gets belligerent with me when I challenge it. And not that I'm overtly challenging, like, quit taking your Sabbath. No, it's more like, hey, we got a lot to do. And he's quick to say, hey, I really feel like I need to be with my wife today. I can't go real estate right now. And at first, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I'm thinking, man, there's a lot to do. But Sean is protecting that peace. He's protecting that day of peace, that day of shalom, the day of the presence of the Lord. And he wants to be able to connect. He wants to be able to journal. He wants to be able to read. And I do all those things, but I like pepper him. I pepper him throughout my day. He preserves one day for that. And I admire that, and it challenges me. And that Sabbath is what allows him to find the silence and to find the solitude and to be still and to know God. Go ahead and put the next photo up. This is hard to see, and I'll progress to another one, but I want to stay here for a second on this one. Caleb went through a series, the I Am series, and I had the privilege of speaking about the light of the world and how the light of the world is not just this thought of Christ being the light of the world. Like, Christ is the light of the world. Like, where Christ comes in, darkness cannot exist. And it was powerful. It changed me. That sermon has changed me. Not the sermon. Christ has changed me. The fact that he is coming in and darkness is going out. I think too many times we think darkness is something. Darkness is nothing. When Christ comes in, it dispels that darkness. It's not there by itself. It's the absence of light. And so when Christ comes in, it dispels darkness. And so as it relates to sin, a lot of times when I told the guys, a lot of times we feel like we have to fight through this sin, like we have to fight it, and we have to beat it down, and we have to bind it up, and we have to throw it out ourselves. Man, that's way too much work. How about just invite Christ into that area of your life and let his light begin to just push it out? Wow, that brings me peace just saying it. This piece of art here, I was just thinking about it. I'm heading to Chicago with my wife in a couple weeks. Actually, next Sunday we leave. Super excited about it. It's going to be the first time that she and I have been alone for 7 years without the children. So super pumped about it. I mean, we've been alone like for date night and overnight every night, but I'm saying like for 5 days. That's huge. And so we're doing it. We're going. I'm taking her with us. We're excited about it. And I get really excited about being in Chicago because there's art museums in Chicago. And I remember I used to love sitting, even as a young guy, like teenager. I remember after church sometimes we'd go grab lunch as a kid with my family, and then we'd go over to the Christ in the Museum after we had lunch, and we spend a couple hours just in an art museum. And I was 8, 9, 10, I don't know, young. But I remember being just drawn in by these pieces of art. And you're not just drawn in if you just like look at it and keep going, man. You're drawn in when you begin to just sit there and just look and just watch and just see. And that's why they got those benches there. You know what I mean? A lot of people are like, why is there a bench right there? The bench is there so you can sit there and be still and to take it in. So I get super excited about going to an art museum in Chicago and just being still for a few hours and just letting the art do its thing. That art is inspiration. Something inspired these artists to put this stuff on canvas or on whatever medium they are. And so that's what this is. This is a piece of art from 1853. William Hull Hunt. I knew I had it in my notes. There we go. William Hunt, 1863, put this on canvas. And about 50 years after he put it on canvas, he said that, it was divinely inspired. Like that's why he made this photo. Go to the next one. It's just a little easier to see. Photo, art, drawing, painting. Here we go. A little easier to see here. It's called The Light of the World. And so obviously it's a rendition or an image of Christ with the lantern, the light in his hand. He's the light bearer. He is the light. You can see the aura, the glow around him. He is the light. And he's up against a door here, and he's knocking on this door. So that's the image there. He said it was inspired by Revelation chapter 3, verse 20. The church of Laodicea, where Christ is knocking on the door and just asking them to open it up so he can go in and dine with them, so he can go in and be in their presence. The verse says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." This is Christ speaking. "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to him and eat with him, and he with me." When you really want to get to know somebody, you share a meal with somebody. That's how you really get to know. I mean, all the weird stuff too, like allergies and just all that stuff that you're like, really? That's weird. But then you also get to hear about their life, It's just kind of fun to sit with people and learn from them and hear from them. And that's the image. That's what Christ wants to do with his people, with his church, is to just come in and have a meal. Just sit. He doesn't want you to prove yourself to him. He doesn't want you to, say, "I've done this and I've done that and I've done this. Aren't you so proud of me? Look at all my Jesus trophies." That's not what he wants. He just wants to come in and sit and have a meal with us. Because he knows what happens when the light comes in. Evangelists sometimes like to use this scripture for non-believers. Like if you would just open the door of your heart, Christ will come in. That's not the context of this verse. This verse, Jesus is speaking to the church in this verse. Jesus is speaking to the church in Laodicea. Jesus was constantly criticized by the religious elite for eating with the prostitutes and the tax collectors and the unsavory people of life. The religious elite were just, man, how can you do that? Why would you go and eat with these people? He was always ridiculed. And I just wonder, if the church of Laodicea had that same kind of hardness to their heart to where they couldn't see what God was trying to accomplish. And so they had their religious aspects of what they did, and they called themselves a church, and they, whatever it was lukewarm, is what the word says. And that's an interesting use of words there, because where Laodicea was, they had built aqueducts to bring the cold mountain water down into the city. And it was nice and cold up in the mountains, but once it got through the hot aqueducts, it was kind of lukewarm. And they was like, well, we got water, but it's not great water. It's not refreshing. They were also surrounded by hot springs. And so if you go to the source of the hot spring and sit in the hot springs, it has therapeutic qualities. And so people would try to grab that hot water and run as quickly as it could up to the wherever and fill baths or whatever with this hot water from the hot springs. And it just didn't really do as much as it did when it was down there, because it was just kind of lukewarm, So it's an interesting image there. And I guarantee you the church of Laodicea got it when they heard it. I can guarantee you that. They had kind of lost their saltiness. They were there, but they just weren't effective. They were lukewarm. Some of the observations about this painting, you'll notice that there's no handle on the outside of the door. There's no handle on the outside of the door. It can only be opened from the inside. So the question again, I haven't asked you yet. The question now is have you given access to Jesus in the deepest recesses of your heart? He's standing at the door. He's knocking. Have you actually opened the door to let him in and to do his thing, to bring the light of the world into the context of your life, to do its thing? Jesus is a gentleman. He doesn't force his way in. He doesn't kick the door down. He's a gentleman. He'll sit there and he'll continue to knock and just wait patiently, graciously for us to open that door. He's waiting just outside. Sometimes we got too much stuff going on the inside to even hear the knock, you know? Music's way up too loud. Can't even hear the knock. You'll notice too that the door, you can't really see it here. You can definitely see it in like a higher definition image of it, but the door is kind of worn out where he's knocking. It's not a brand new door. It's kind of worn out. It's kind of beat up because he's been sitting there knocking for so long. Interesting. You see the shrubs, you see the overgrowth. Nobody's even come out of that door for a while, you know? It's just crazy. It's crazy imagery. Christ, the Messiah, the light of the world, the God of the universe, at a door, knocking, saying, I want to have dinner with you, and crickets. Nothing from the inside. He comes back again and again, day after day, week after week. And I just wonder, like, what is compelling somebody not to open the door when they hear that knock? Are you just wanting to shut them out? Maybe you think, I don't want him to go near that. I don't want him to see my unkept place. I don't want him to see my dirty dishes. My house isn't ready for the Messiah to come in. Or maybe you just don't want him to have access to that. I mean, there's certain things we do around certain people that would never do around other people. You know? And I just wonder, like, we just don't want to have to kind of let people see this side of us, so we're just going to not let them into that area of my life, which does nothing for community. If anything, it drives wedges and breaks it down. So Christ is here. He's knocking. He's gracious. He's patient. He's loving. He keeps coming back again and again and again. And he just says, man, if you would just give me access, if you would just let me come in and eat with you, I will heal you. I will heal you. I bring freedom. I will free you from whatever is holding fast to you. I will redeem you. Just let me in. I have everything you need for life and godliness. If you would just open the stinking door and let me in, find healing. What I love about this too is he's not angry. He's just there. And he's patient and he's loving. He doesn't want to kick down the door and yell at you for not answering. He's just there. He's just there and he's just waiting for you to open the door. Romans 2:4 never resonated in my mind like it does now after taking into consideration this. Romans 2:4 says, God's kindness leads us to repentance. The kindness of God leads us to repentance. It's not guilt. It's not shame. It's not this deep conviction. It's God's kindness in coming in, the light of the world coming in and dispelling, pushing out, bringing clarity, bringing right frame of mind. That is what leads to repentance, his kindness, not his anger, not his shame, not his guilt. It's him. It's his kindness coming in. He's knocking at the door. And what happens when we don't open the door? He just resorts to more kindness. He doesn't get more angry. He resorts to more kindness. It's amazing to me. I could just hear him saying, oh, Christian, when will you give me access to that stuff that lies underneath? Man, you look so good. Your top 10%, that tip of the iceberg, man, that looks stellar. That 90% that's under the water, man, that's where all those emotions are. That's where all that anger is that just is eating you up. Sometimes the awesome thing about being still and sitting with the Father is some of those emotions will bubble up, and become apparent. which they aren't ever apparent when we're busy because we just keep suppressing them and kind of pushing them back down. But sitting in solitude and stillness with the Father, allowing Jesus to come in and dine with you, those poignant questions will be asked, and we'll understand. Man, there's so many times where I'll be in men's group and somebody will ask a question and I'll start answering that question. As I'm answering it, I'm super convicted in the moment because I realize I haven't dealt with that in my own life, you know? And that's what happens, man, when the Spirit of God comes in. It bubbles, it messes with stuff a little bit. So why don't we give him access? Why don't we open the door? Why don't we open the door? For some of us, I doubt many of us in this room, it's hard-heartedness. I look through this crowd and I see a lot of guys and a lot of gals who are loving people, and they know community. They understand the love of Christ. So I don't think it's just open rebellion. Like, I just don't want you here. I think for a vast majority of us, the reason why we don't open the door, the reason why we don't experience like real life transformation and healing is because we just simply don't hear the knock at the door. We simply don't see it. And if we don't hear it, if we don't see it, we can't respond to it. I think in the world we live in, we're just inundated with so many things, and we just want instant gratification so quickly. And unfortunately, the transformed heart just doesn't happen in a hurry. It just doesn't. Sometimes I've heard stories and testimonies, freedom from addiction, where Christ just rushes in and addiction's gone or healing happens. But that transformed heart, that character, that deep down character piece of you takes a little while. And that dinner needs to be a long dinner with the Father. It doesn't happen in a hurry. It can't happen when your life is loud, when there's a lot of stuff going on, parties and sports and work and whatever. I love all those things. Those things have purpose. They have a time and a place. But I can't have it happening 24/7 and still think that I have time to sit with the Father. Giving Jesus access to our heart, opening the door, is going to require us to slow down. It's going to require us to be still. It's going to require us to be quiet. Is this resonating with you guys? There's an Asian American pastor out of Chicago. Wow. I'll have to look him up. I didn't make that connection until just now. And he talks about how we suffer from hurry sickness, how so many of us suffer from hurry sickness. When we are hurrying or we're busy, it allows us not to have to deal with our emotions. It allows us not to even deal with other people that we have rifts with, because we always have that excuse, I just don't have time because I'm busy, because I'm doing my thing. It allows us just to ignore it when we're busy. The problem is when we ignore these emotions, when we ignore these broken relationships, when we try to suppress these things down with the busyness and the noise of life, sometimes we leak. Sometimes we leak. And the people we leak on are usually those closest to us, our family and our friends, our loved ones. And so we hurry around to try to mask these things. I'm going to move on because I think it's really important to understand this concept of transformative prayer or contemplative prayer. How much time do we have, Jason? Are we done? Should we be done? Let's go to the next photo real quick. And if you want to go ahead and just put some music on too, if you got something queued up here. So just in case you can't totally see this, once again, it's art. It's just a rendering of somebody's inspiration or something that was in their head. This is a young girl in a cage, and the door is wide open, and the Father's hand is right there. And her eyes are closed, and she's sulking, and she still feels trapped, and she still feels beat up. But yet in the distance, you see a bird that has flown, and it's free, and it's an eagle, and it's doing its thing, as we're called to do. But yet here we are in a cage with the door wide open, with an opportunity in front of us to be with the Father and let the Father bring healing and freedom. But yet we won't step. We won't open our eyes and step into the hand. I want you guys to dig deep and just kind of, how is this stirring you? Like, what is welling up inside of you right now as you look at this? What are some of the emotions that are coming up or being stirred? Maybe it's just a real pity and sorrow for this gal. Maybe your heart is being broken. That would be the better response rather than pity, would be a broken heart towards this kind of posture. Or maybe this is you, but none of us in this room know it. Being a guy on the other side of deliverance from some things in my life, when I look at this, I see hope, and that's what kind of stirs in my heart. Is there's a way out, there's a hope, But I remember being on the other side of that equation and not having that deliverance yet, and it wasn't hope, it was despair, and it did feel like I was stuck, and it did feel like it was a cycle that just wouldn't end. I've talked to the guys before about just my addiction with women and things like that from the past, and how the Lord delivered me from that is I sat with him. Like, I was literally sitting there womanizing, and I hated myself for it. I was in a cage hating myself, and the Spirit spoke, and he said, I can free you from this. And so I invited Christ into that environment, like right there with me. Jesus, come be with me and help me deal and understand with this mess and what's going on. And what he allowed for me to see was that this woman on the other side of the screen was somebody's daughter. And not only that, but she was a daughter of Zion, like she's created. She's created. How in the world could I devalue something so beautiful? And all that happened because the light of the world came into that context and illuminated and dispelled that nastiness. And I remember just the feeling of being like a month removed from that, and 6 months removed from that, and eventually a year from that, and now, tens of years from that. And I just praise, I just thank the Father for that hand that's extended, that allowed me to get out of that, It's what makes me worship, is the fact that I can now step in his hand. Not only that, but he's launched me. He's launched me into other things that have eternal value and not just temporary value. It's not even value. It's just deception that it's even value. So I don't know where you're at in this picture. But our God wants so much to just have a meal with you and just sit with you. He doesn't care if you're having SpaghettiOs. He doesn't care if you're having prime rib. He doesn't care. He just wants to sit with you. He wants to see your kids' messy faces. He wants to see the dirty laundry in the corner. He wants to smell the dirty litter box. He just wants to be with you. He could care less about what that environment looks like. He just wants to be in it. So quit believing the lie that things have to be so cleaned up and ready. Just open the door. So I'm going to spend just a couple minutes and we're going to just be silent. And I just want you guys to ask yourselves honestly, don't reject this moment. Ask yourselves honestly, what areas of your heart are you not given access to the Father? What areas of your heart, what areas of your life is he just sitting there kindly and gently knocking, wanting access? Not so he can come in and shame you, but so he can deliver you. So he can bring you freedom. I'm sitting here praying and kind of thinking about this. I just have this image of, when you're in a hotel and you got that little security bar where you can open the door like 4 inches, and the person on the other side can't quite come in, but you can have a conversation. Let's just start there. Let's just start there. You don't have to let him all the way in. Just crack the door and just hear what he has to say about you. Let the Spirit of God speak over you. Good things, honest things. Do you guys know that you're beautifully and wonderfully made? That He knows every hair on your head? That even before the time you were born, He knew where you'd be right now, and He knew exactly. None of this is surprising to Him. And yet He still wants to come in and He still wants to eat with us. None of it is surprising to Him. Oh, Father God, You're so good, Lord. Your loving kindness, Your steadfast love, You're loving us before we even know how we need to be loved. That preemptive love, Lord, that You display time and time and time again. Lord, when we look back, we're like, wow, the enemy's hand was stayed. You delivered me from these things. But for some reason, when we look forward, Father, it's hard to see Your hand. So God, I pray that tonight we will, as a people, commit to allowing You in. That we'll commit to just allowing You in and just sitting with us, maybe just in the front room for now, so we can understand better Your heart for us, so we can understand better Your true character, not what the world says about You, but what Yourself speaks about You. Spirit of God, only with You can we even have understanding of who God is. And so we pray that You fall on us. I believe the enemy wants us to think that we're okay with the status quo, that we've become good enough for now, and that we'll worry about tomorrow. Father, we're not guaranteed tomorrow, and I pray that You burn that on our hearts. We might not be able to have this opportunity tomorrow with You, to allow You to come in and sit with us. And so right now, Lord, you're being so gracious by even being present with us right now, available to us to have you come in. So God, I pray that the pride will die in the name of Christ. I pray that the self-reliance will die in the name of Christ, Lord. Let's pray for great things for these people. Great revelations of who you are and your goodness to them. Great revelations of who they are and your love for them. Great revelations of how they could just rest and be in your presence and not have to prove something to you. You're the good shepherd. You'll take us to where we need to be. You'll take us to that green pasture. You'll take us beside those still and quiet waters. You're not going to give us serpents. You're not going to give us something that's going to harm us. You're only going to give us something that's good and lasting and beneficial. So God, I pray that where our faith is weak, our trust will grow in you and in your voice, your good voice. I pray that we can hear it and understand it. And we're just simply not going to hear it with the door shut. So Spirit, once again, convict us, Lord. Give us that loving kindness. May we repent because of your kindness. May we quit locking the door and just open it up and just let you have your way in us. It's so difficult. Even now, I can just sense in my own heart, and I'm sure the hearts of others, just a growing doubt. Like we get excited about the thought of you being present and revelatory and doing your thing in our life, but yet we also understand that the sin stuff is still yoked on us, and it just doesn't feel right to have you in our presence when there's still so much around us and in us that just isn't endearing. And so, Father, I pray that we will just allow you to come in and just do your thing. Wash us clean, Father, by the blood of the Lamb. You're so good, Lord. I just want to sit here forever, but I know we got babies downstairs. I know we got things we got to do. But I just, man, my prayer for you guys, my prayer for my own life this week is that we will just make time to be still and just hear from a God who loves you so, so, so much and has amazing, great things for you. I think it's a lot of times we can replace it and we think that our life is peachy keen the way it is. Like we don't need it. But man, how much more peachy keen is it going to be if the God of the universe is part of that equation with you? I have a good friend of mine who is living with his girlfriend and they're just not married, but they're happy. And my question to him is, man, how much happier would you be if you invited God into this relationship? It just exponentially more joy would come. And so for some of us who feel like we have it good and kind of got it dialed in, how much better can it be if the God of the universe is helping us dial that in even further? And for those of you who are sitting in the cage tonight, I pray that you can see that outstretched hand. You're not here alone. If you feel like you are alone, come and see me. I'll promise you, you won't feel like you're alone when you leave. Come and see me. You're well loved, even if you don't know it, even if you don't feel it. So you guys go and be blessed in the name of Jesus Christ. You have a good week.